Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francess, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. There is a harsh truth in modern dating that a lot of people learn the hard way. You can build a strong connection with someone and still be building the wrong thing. You can like them. You can be excited. You can talk every day. You can spend weekends together. You can feel that pull. You can feel that finally feeling. And then one decision, one step taken too early or taken for the wrong reason changes the entire relationship's trajectory. Not because you're naive and not because you're weak, because certain choices don't just create memories, they create attachment. They change your standards in ways you don't notice until you're negotiating with yourself. So today's episode is about something people avoid talking about honestly because it's charged. People get defensive, people moralize, people hear judgment where there isn't any. And I'm not interested in judging you. I'm interested in telling you the truth. This episode is about sex. How it changes the stakes, how people use it, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, to gain things from others, to win them over, to secure a relationship, to trick someone into staying, to turn chemistry into a commitment, to turn a maybe into a mine. And it's also about the other side of the truth. Adults can absolutely have sex with no strings attached if that's what they want. It can be healthy, it can be fun, it can be clean, and it can be respectful, but only under one condition: transparency. If both people are aligned, it's not a problem. If one person is using sex as a strategy while the other person thinks they're building towards something real, that's where people get hurt. That's what we're going to unpack directly, clearly, and in a way that actually helps you make better decisions. Before we say the word and go there, I want to lay the foundation because this is where people get confused. There is a difference between connection and alignment. See, connection is what you feel: attraction, comfort, chemistry, ease, curiosity, excitement. Alignment is what holds values: lifestyle compatibility, emotional maturity, consistency, direction, respect, stability. Connection can show up fast. Alignment is what takes time to verify. And the problem isn't that people move fast. The problem is that people treat connection like proof of alignment. They assume the feeling means the foundation is there. They assume closeness means compatibility. They assume chemistry means this is it. So they start increasing the stakes before they verified what the stakes are being placed on. That's the trap. The pace changes what you tolerate. When you're still early, still in discovery, you can notice inconsistencies and call them what they are. You can walk away clean. You can say, this isn't aligned, and mean it. But once you cross certain lines with someone, you don't see the same behavior the same way. The exact same inconsistency would have been an easy no, becomes a complicated maybe. You start explaining things. You start being patient in ways you don't even respect. You start giving more to keep momentum alive. That's not romance. That's attachment doing what attachment does. Now, when I say stakes, I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about anything that makes someone feel like they have a seat in your life before they've earned that seat. Being your default, being your comfort person, being the person you reach for when you're stressed. Those things aren't bad. That's how relationships are supposed to work when you're actually in one. The issue is when those privileges show up before the foundation is confirmed, because then the bond becomes the reason you stay, instead of alignment being the reason you build. And this is where sex comes in, because sex is the fastest way to raise the stakes. So let's say it. Sex doesn't make something real, it makes something sticky. Pun intended. It creates attachment. It creates a sense of connection that feels deeper than the actual foundation. It makes people feel chosen even when they haven't been chosen. It makes people tolerate unclear because the bond feels too real to dismiss. And that's why people use sex to gain things. They use it to gain attention, to gain commitment, to gain exclusivity, to gain importance. They use it to gain security. They use it to gain leverage. And maybe even some monetary compensation. Sometimes that's intentional. Sometimes it's not. But it happens all the time. Now, I want to be precise because I'm not going to pretend this is only one gender or one type of person. People do this across the board. Some men use sex to get access without responsibility. They'll say what they need to say. They'll do what they need to do, create the vibe, build the anticipation. And once they get what they want, the effort drops. And I'm sure there's some ladies out there that have seen this, have felt this. The warmth changes. The consistency disappears. Now, on the opposite side, some women use sex to try to secure commitment. They'll tell themselves, if we do this, he'll take me seriously. Or once we bond, he won't want to lose me. Or if I give him what he wants, he'll choose me. Same behavior, different motive, same outcome. Someone is trying to use sex as a tool to shape the relationship. And here's the truth. You can't use sex to manufacture character. You can't use sex to manufacture consistency. You can't use sex to manufacture emotional maturity. You cannot use sex to manufacture intention. You can intensify what already exists, but you can't create what isn't there. That's why some people are devastated after sex. Not because sex was wrong, but because they thought the sex meant something that the other person never agreed to. So the first question in this episode is not, when should you have sex? The first question is, what lane are you in? Because there are two lanes that can be healthy, and one lane that creates most of the pain. Lane one, you want a relationship. You are dating with intention. You're building towards commitment. You want alignment, not just not just chemistry. Now there's lane two. No strings attached. You want something casual. You want connection without commitment. And most importantly, you're honest about it. Now, both lanes can be adult. Both lanes can be respectful. The lane that destroys people is the third one, when the lanes aren't aligned, where one person is building and the other person is browsing. When one person thinks sex is part of the relationship process and the other person thinks sex is the relationship. When one person is treating the bond as an investment and the other person is treating the bond as an experience. That's when sex becomes currency. That's when sex becomes leverage. That's when people win something they didn't earn. And if you're listening, I want you to understand this. Most people don't get hurt because they had sex. They get hurt because they had sex while living inside a story that was never agreed to. They were bonding while the other person was consuming. Now let's talk about sex being used to gain things, because this is the part people don't want to say out loud, but they feel it. Some people use sex like bait. They create the vibe. They create future talk. They create the illusion of intention because they know it lowers your guard. Then they push the pace. They push closeness. They make it feel like destiny. They make it feel like you're safe. After the sex, the mask slips, sometimes subtly, sometimes immediately. The I can't wait to see where this goes becomes I've been busy. The daily text becomes sporadic. The plan becomes vague. They still want access. I mean, especially if it was good, but they don't want the responsibility. They still want the benefits, especially if it was good, but they don't want the role. And the more intentional person starts doing something painful, they start blaming themselves. They start thinking, did I do it too soon? Did I do it wrong? Did I say something? What they rarely ask is the real question. Was this person ever building? Because if they were building, sex doesn't make them disappear. If they were building, sex doesn't make them vague. If they were intentional, sex makes them want to integrate, not withdraw. So when someone changes after sex, you don't need a detective board. You need blunt honesty. You need to be able to say, sex didn't change them, sex revealed them. Now, the other side is just as real. People who use sex as a way to secure. This is where someone believes if I give more, I'll be chosen. They treat sex like a ticket. They treat it like proof that they're valuable. They treat it like a way to lock down the relationship before it's actually stable. And it's not because they're bad. It's because they're scared. They're scared of being replaced. They're scared of losing their person. They're scared of being alone. They're scared that if they don't give someone that access, someone else will. So they try to get ahead of the uncertainty by speeding up the bond. But sex isn't a relationship plan. Sex is not a commitment contract. Sex is not a guarantee. And when you treat it like it is, you're gambling with your peace and self-respect. Here's a line that matters. If sex is being used to earn a choice, you're already negotiating your worth. And you can't build a healthy relationship on a negotiation. Now, I want to take a second to talk about the no strings attached lane properly, because I'm not here to pretend casual sex is automatically toxic. Adults can do casual responsibly. It can be clean. It can be respectful. It can be mutual beneficial. It can be enjoyable without being harmful. But casual only works when it's honest. And honesty is not implied, it's expressed. Transparency means both people understand what this is and what this isn't, and what they're responsible for emotionally. Because the thing that makes casual unhealthy isn't the sex, it's the hidden contract. The hidden contract is when someone says, yeah, I can do this. I'm fine with casual. But they're actually hoping it turns into a relationship. Or when someone says, I'm open, but they're really using you as a placeholder. Or when someone says, let's just have fun, but they're keeping you emotionally tethered while they shop. Casual becomes painful when it's not casual. It becomes painful when the word says no strings, but the heart is already tying knots. So here's an adult truth. If you want no strings attached, you have to be strong enough to keep it no strings attached. That doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're honest about what you're doing, and you don't secretly punish the other person for not reading your mind. This is where communication comes in again, as always. If you can do that, casual can work. If you can't do that, casual will feel like rejection on repeat. And it's compounded because now you've even given up a big part of yourself. Now let's get into the heart of this episode, the attachment slope. People don't realize how much sex changes their willingness to walk away. Before sex, you can say, this isn't aligned. And it's still sad, but at least it's clean. After sex, the same misalignment feels heavier. It feels personal. It feels like a loss. It feels like you have to try harder because you've invested more. Your mind starts doing quiet negotiations. You don't even notice at first. It sounds reasonable in your head. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe I should be patient. Maybe it's too early to expect consistency. And some of those thoughts in isolation are 100% fair. But if the pattern is inconsistent, sex makes you more likely to tolerate that inconsistency. That's the slope. This is why people end up in the come over lane, even when they don't respect it. They don't want that kind of a connection, but they accept it because it's access, it's content, it's contact. It's a hit of closeness. It calms the nervous system. So if you've ever been in that situation where you know you want something real, but you keep accepting something convenient, this is why. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you're attached. And attachment can make crumbs feel like a meal. Now, I want to say something that might sound blunt, but it saves people. If sex makes you afraid to ask for clarity, you already know the answer. Because if you're building something healthy, clarity doesn't threaten it. Clarity strengthens it. If you're scared to ask, what are we doing? It's usually because you're afraid the other person will admit they're not doing what you're doing. And that fear keeps you quiet. And guess what? Then you keep giving access without direction. That, my friends, is not intentional dating. That's hoping your silence buys you a future. And I hate to break it to you, but it doesn't. So, what does intentional look like here? Intentional looks like a person who knows their lane before they bond. If you want a relationship, you don't need to negotiate every detail on date 1. You don't need to demand commitment after 2 dates. You don't need to force a label, but you do need direction. You need to know whether the person you're bonding with is exploring the same outcome. Direction sounds like, I'm dating intentionally. I'm not doing indefinite. Direction sounds like, I'm open to seeing where this goes, which, when it comes to online dating, that's what a lot of people say. But I'm not building in a vague lane. Direction sounds like, I like you. I'm attracted to you. I'm not interested in being confused. Those are adult sentences, and adults who are aligned don't get offended by them. Adults who are aligned don't interpret direction as pressure. They interpret direction as clarity. Now, before anyone mishears me, direction is not a guarantee that something won't work. People can still be aligned and still realize that it's not the fit. That's normal. That's the whole point of dating. The point is that you don't bond with someone who refuses to be honest about what they're building. Because if they refuse that honesty, the bond becomes a trap. Now, let's address some common pushback, because people love to say it to me. Joey, if we need direction before sex, aren't we making sex too serious? Well, no. You're not making sex serious. You're making your life serious. Because sex is not just an act, it's an entry point. It increases intimacy. It increases attachment. It increases expectation. Even if you tell yourself it doesn't, it literally changes everything. And if you're the kind of person who bonds deeply, you have to respect that about yourself. That's not a flaw. That's how you're wired. I know there's a lot of people out there that say, I cannot do no strings attached. Sex is too meaningful to me. And that's exactly what I mean here. If that's how you're wired, that's how you're wired. And that's okay. The mistake is pretending you're not wired that way and then blaming yourself when your feelings show up. So instead of pretending you build with self-awareness, you say, this is how I attach. This is how I bond. So I'm going to choose the person and the context that deserves that bond. That's maturity. Now, let's talk about the people who use sex to manipulate, because we need to name it clearly. Manipulation doesn't always look like lies. Sometimes it looks like future talk. I can see this becoming something. Listen, I'm not like other people. I've never felt this before. I'm looking for something real. Said early, said intensely, said just enough to lower your guard. Sometimes it looks like pressure disguised as desire. If you liked me, you would. Why are you making this difficult? I thought you were different. Sometimes it looks like entitlement, acting like access is owed because they paid attention for a few days. Sometimes it looks like emotional punishment, withdrawing warmth when you hold a boundary, becoming distance when you say, not yet, making you feel like you have to earn their interest. If you hear any of that, you are not in a healthy connection whatsoever. You are in a negotiation. And the strongest thing you can do in that moment is not argue, it's not explain, and it's not debate. It's to recognize what is happening. Someone is trying to use your body at the price of admission to their attention, and you do not pay that price. Now, I also want to speak to the people who feel called out because they've used sex to gain commitment. This isn't about shaming you. This is about waking you up. If you're using sex to get someone to choose you, you are already positioned beneath them. You're already acting like their choice is the prize and your self-respect is the cost. That mindset will always lead to imbalance because the person you're trying to win will feel it. They may not articulate it, but they feel the power dynamic. And power dynamics don't create love, they create control or convenience. So if you catch yourself thinking, if I do this, they'll stay, stop. That thought is an alarm. That thought is telling you the truth. You do not feel secure in their intention. And if you don't feel secure in their intention, you're not building, you're gambling. You're giving them the power to treat you badly, essentially, because they know that they can get away with it. Now, let's get practical about what adults do to keep this clean. First and foremost, decide your lane. If you want casual, own it, say it, live it. Don't pretend you're casual while hoping to be chosen. That's how you break your own heart. If you want a relationship, own it, say it, live it. Don't act casual to keep someone interested. That's how you teach yourself to accept less. Second, you stop outsourcing clarity to chemistry. Chemistry doesn't tell you if someone is stable. Chemistry doesn't tell you if someone is consistent. Chemistry doesn't tell you if someone is emotionally mature. Chemistry tells you you want them. That's all. So you enjoy chemistry, but you still need to verify. Third, you judge the situation by behavior after sex, not the intensity before it. Before sex, a lot of people can be charming. After sex, you see what their baseline is. Do they continue showing up? Do they plan? Do they communicate steadily? Do they integrate you into their life? Do they become clearer, not vaguer? Or do they get convenient? Do they get inconsistent? Do they just keep the door open just enough to keep that access there? That's not a mystery. That's a pattern. Fourth, if you're already attached, you correct course instead of negotiating. This is where people lose so much time. They know the person is inconsistent, but they keep giving access because they don't want to lose the bond. They call it trying. No, trying is what you do when two people are aligned and building. Trying is not what you do when the other person is vague, inconsistent, and uncommitted. You know who you are. That's not trying. That's tolerating. So correction looks like reducing access to match reality, not as a test, not as a punishment, as alignment. Your behavior matches what's true. If there's no direction, you don't give relationship level access. If there's no chemistry, if there's no consistency, you don't give comfort on demand. If there's no respect, you don't give intimacy. That's not cruelty, that's self-respect. I want to talk about a subtle form of manipulation that people don't name: the assumed relationship. This is when two people start having sex, start spending nights together, start living like a couple, and yet nobody says anything. They avoid the conversation because it's uncomfortable, and they assume the behavior means the truth. And then someone gets hurt. This is why adults talk. This is why intentional dating is extremely verbal. Because if you want to avoid being tricked, you don't rely on implications. You rely on clarity. And clarity doesn't have to be heavy. It can literally be one sentence. I'm enjoying this. I'm attracted to you. I want to know what you're looking for. Or, I'm not doing vague. I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking if we're building intentionally. Those sentences protect you. They don't control anyone. They just force reality into the room. Now, let me adjust the fear underneath all of this because it drives so much behavior. People are afraid that if they require clarity, they'll lose the person. And unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, sometimes you will. And if requiring clarity makes them leave, you didn't lose someone who was building with you. You lost someone who was benefiting from your availability. That is not a loss. That's protection. Because here's the real truth. Someone who wants you doesn't need you to compromise your standards to keep them interested. You don't need to prove your value through access. They build, they show up, they choose, they get clearer, not vaguer. And when that's the case, sex isn't a tool, it's an expression. When alignment is real, sex isn't used to gain, it's used to deepen. That's the difference. Now, let me add one more piece to this because a lot of people are going to ask the same question after hearing all of this. So, what do I do then? Do I make them wait? And here's my answer. If you want a long-term relationship and you are dating with intention, waiting is not a punishment. Waiting is how you protect your clarity long enough to verify the foundation. And I want to say this clearly. The 3-date rule, it's dumb. It's lazy. It's someone trying to turn intimacy into a schedule so they don't have to think. There's no magic number. There's your pace. There's your nervous system. There's your blueprint. Wink, wink. You do things at your pace. But pace doesn't mean guessing. Pace has a purpose. If you're building towards a real relationship, then you wait long enough to answer the questions that actually matter. Do we agree on direction? Do our values match? Are they consistent when it's not convenient? Do they respect boundaries without negotiation? Do I feel safe to be honest? Or do I feel like I have to perform? Because if the foundations don't align, sex doesn't fit that. Sex just increases attachment and makes the exit heavier. So yes, sometimes waiting is the smartest move you can make. Not because sex is bad, but because sex is powerful. And you're not going to use something powerful in an unidentified lane. And here's the point that separates adults from games. If the person is truly on the same page as you, if they genuinely want something real, waiting will not be an issue. They won't pressure you. They won't punish you. They won't act entitled. They won't make you feel like you have to pay for their attention with your body. Because someone who's serious isn't counting dates. They're watching alignment. They'll keep building. They'll keep showing up. They'll keep proving consistency. They'll keep respecting your pace because the goal isn't to get sex. The goal is to build a relationship that can actually hold it. So if you set a pace and the person disappears, that's not you losing someone. That's you avoiding someone who was only there for access. They're literally doing you a favor. I know sometimes it hurts. It sucks. But they're doing you a favor. Because here's the thing, if you did have sex with that person, do you think the relationship was real? They're just trying to get in your pants. So if you say no sex and they, you should thank them. Anyways, if you take one thing from this episode, I want you to take this. Sex should deepen alignment, not replace it. If you want casual, be honest, keep it clean. Don't sell intimacy as commitment. If you want a relationship, stop using sex to earn a choice. Stop bonding in unidentified lanes. Stop giving access to someone who hasn't shown you the foundation. Because when you bond with the wrong person, the bond doesn't protect you. It traps you. And I don't want you trapped. I want you choosing. Remember, choose. Don't go out there to be chosen. Because that's how you end up giving someone sex when they don't deserve it. Now, on that note, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed this. And always, if you have any questions for me or podcast ideas, you can message me at joeyfrances.com. That's JOEYFRANCESS.com. And there you can get access to my services, my books, and of course, the form to send me a message. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't know by the time this comes out, but I do have a new book on the horizon. It is called The Blueprint Method, Dating with Intention. Essentially, what this whole podcast is about doing. And it goes in depth, asks the hard questions, and gets you to make the right choices. So that will be up on my website. Again, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. And remember, if sex is the strategy, you are already losing. Till next time.